Right, morning. Welcome everybody. Yeah, it's good to be back. Been sick, lame, and lazy for 10 days or so, but yeah, back on the straight and narrow, hopefully, and kick the dreaded lurgy into touch. So yeah, Lee, I'm going to just bounce it straight across to you to talk about the topic this morning, because I haven't caught up with everything that I need to catch up with. So not too sure where we're going this morning.
I'm assuming you're talking about this Lee, and not the doppelganger who's calling himself Lee.
the bald Lee.
So,
I don't know who did that, because it wasn't me, and I can't seem to change it.
all right. So we actually are wanting to talk about a serious subject today, and a relevant subject, because we were talking yesterday about action, about our actions speak louder than our words. And we were now talking about, so how does that relate to our current circumstances or the context in which we find ourselves? So this is being the South African Wisdom Chats, and the majority of us from South Africa, we obviously are very aware of our context at the moment, a context in which going into nearly, it's 18 months of various levels of lockdown. We in fact have not come out of a form of lockdown from the end of March last year, and so there's been those various kinds of restrictions. We're in the height, or just coming off the height, of our third wave of the pandemic. More and more people have been ill, and more people that we know and are within our circles have died or are seriously ill or have been seriously ill. And then there's a corruption investigation that's been going on now, nearly going on for 2 years. And the ex-president of South Africa was called to give his account to this investigation, and refused to be present, even though the Constitutional Court required that he should at least attend. They didn't say that he had to say anything, but that he needed to be there, and he didn't. And so as a result of contempt of court, he is required to go to jail. And that has caused some unrest, which has then spilled over into rioting and burning of shops and malls. And so I'm just painting the picture of where we find ourselves now. This is probably information that you all know, but just wanting to give a summary of the context. And just to make it more human, I contacted my helper, who has not been coming to work for the last 3 weeks because of the pandemic. For her safety and our safety, we decided that her going on public transport and coming into our home, well, exposing herself and then coming into our home, just wasn't a good idea. But I contacted her just to find out if she was okay in the midst of everything that was happening. And she just said, Lee, it's very, very bad. She said, the shops all around us have been burnt. And her words are, I don't know how we are going to survive. So it's very real. It's very painful. And our discussion today is, what can we do? And I can come back to my own thoughts around that, but I just wanted to paint the context and set the scene, and perhaps we can go from there.
Right, thanks, Lee. Yeah, it is the perennial question, isn't it? You know, what can we do, and how do we do it? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what people's thoughts are. So Trevor, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I believe, Ivan, sorry, because you've been so out of touch, and I understand that it takes the mind some time to recover and get onto our wave as it is. I'd like, and I propose there, and I hope Thabiso doesn't mind, I'd like to just see through the eyes of Thabiso, because Thabiso is moving in and out of a very troubled environment, and I'm amazed that he's actually made it today. So before I make any comment, I'd just love to get some comment and context from Thabiso as to what he's seen, how it's affecting him, how it's affecting his family, etc. So Thabiso, if you wouldn't mind, and we're going to stop video just to give Thabiso an opportunity to connect with us and hopefully get his bandwidth working.
Good morning. Firstly, I would like to say, wow, Ivan, it's so great to have you back. Man, I'm thankful to God. So thank you for that, you know, rated. So what difference can you make in this world that's plagued by, you know, bad morality, injustices, and just blatant mass conditioning, you know? It's a very difficult question, isn't it? You know, I just had to stop and think for a bit, you know. But the answer for me, I think it's a very simple one, you know. I'm going to say Huawei. Don't stress about things that you can't control, you know. Leave things to God and the universe, and just live your life as best as you can. There's no use in crying over spilled milk or try to affect change in things that you can't absolutely do nothing about. You know, you can't die because of another person's troubles and all that. You know, I think that what you can do is actually take care of yourself. You know, the biggest things that you can do are for yourself. You know, just take care of yourself, love yourself unconditionally. You know, you are God's magnificent creation. Just treat yourself matters. You are royalty, you know, and the sun shines when you smile, you know. Just think that in difficult times like these, you know, you just have to make yourself a priority first. You can't be fixing other people's problems when your house is not in perfect order, you know. Be kind to yourself, but also have high standards, and just forgive yourself for past mistakes, and life goes on. Try to do better next time, you know. My answer is just to love yourself thoughts. They are life energy. Your thoughts are how you perceive reality. You can't dwell on negative energy, you know. Just have good thoughts about yourself, and it would have a rippling effect on how you view the outside world, you know. Just stay away from angry people and negative vibes. Yes, of course, it is easy to be angry, you know, and be fearful, but you have to control how you see the world, you know. Cleanse your spirit, have some me time, you know. Take a walk in nature, go on a holiday, buy that shoe, just do something nice for yourself, you know. You are important, you matter. Treat yourself like royalty, you know. My message, of course, love yourself. Avoid things that make you drift, and things that actually enable you to betray your heart. Be with the people who want the best for you. Love yourself and take care of yourself. the world will follow, you know. You just can't fix politics. There will always be power games, greed and exploitation, just things you can't control. You can't even change human nature. You can't change anything about the world. Just way. Just take care of yourself and your loved one. Do the things that you can control, you know, to make your life better, your surroundings better. Look after yourself, love yourself. I think that's just what I can contribute for today's topic, you know. So thank you, Ivan.
Right, thanks so much, Thabiso. Yeah, I think some wise words from a young head there. So thank you very much for that. So Joe, back to you.
Yeah, and this comes from a guy who's right in the center of all of the crisis in Alexandria. I mean, just what an incredible head on this youngster. And it just compels me to, this guy's got to get around the rest of the world. But look, you want my inputs on context at the moment. I think just going along the lines of where Thabiso was going, you can't control what other fools and idiots are doing. And you can't react to it, you've got to respond to it. So how am I responding to it? And I must tell you, I have people all around me. I'm almost carrying, you know, we've got a lot of single women in homes in the suburbs that I'm living to, and now I'm having to, they're just coming for support. It's as simple as that, because of the fear of what's on the go, and we can't live in denial. So my simple view of what's going on is we're now in a deep, dark hole. That is the real clear perception. And you know, quite simply is, when you're in a deep, dark hole, how do you get out of it? There's only one way to get out of it, and that's to climb out of it. Otherwise, you bury yourself. And with people like Thabiso around, you know, no one wants to actually bury themselves in a life today. So I think wisdoms and what we've been doing here for our wisdoms team is the absolute critical foundation that has underpinned our attitude of how we approach these things. None of this is of our direct making. I'd say direct because there are individuals that say there are all sorts of indirect implications going back hundreds of years. Okay, but I loved what Thabiso also said. You can't. He said something to the effect that you can't change the past. You can't change what happened there. It's now, what are you going to do from here? And we've got to start climbing. And so that's the way that I see it. I'm not happy with how I see the country positioned at the moment. This, I do see a deep, dark hole here. And unless it is stabilized by those with the power to actually stabilize it, we have got another huge problem. But if we can't actually affect that and impact ourselves as individuals, then we got to work out how do we help ourselves and our families to climb out of this deep, dark hole. So that's what occupies my mind at the moment. And then obviously there are people that I'm concerned about. They're on this forum. So I'm concerned about, if I'm thinking that, how can I help them too? But maybe others don't think that way. So let me give them some room to talk.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, right. So Ed, from an outsider's perspective, what are you hearing and seeing and thinking?
Yeah, the problems hit the UK news, the mainstream UK news. And I did a bit of research around what was going on. And I found it quite interesting because some of it seems to be quite malicious and generated by social media content, people whipping things up. Some of it seems to be criminality. But I was kind of looking a bit deeper and did some sort of research, and apparently unemployment rates are almost 33% in South Africa. 46% among people below 24. So that there is part of the problem, isn't it? You've got lots of people with no futures, no work. So, you know, maybe the way out is it's to build the economy. And I was thinking, you know, you cannot solve the world's problems, but you can do your bit. And I think you should do your bit. And if we think about it, kind of, it works in some aspects. For example, if we vote in elections, you know, we can't have an effect in an election on our own, but we still do our bit by voting. And some people do a bit more by also promoting the person they want to vote for, by sort of saying, oh, I'm voting for whoever it is, they're a good person. They might even be more active. They might be a political activist. So we all do our bit in some ways in our community. And I was thinking, well, you know, how can I do my bit to help South Africa? And at the moment, I'm appalled at our UK government. We are a very fortunate position. On Monday, all COVID restrictions have been removed. We'll have no more restrictions as of Monday. And we've got 66% of our population have been double vaccinated. So we're in a really strong position. And okay, yeah, we've struggled a bit because, you know, the economy's tanked a bit, but we had this proud position of making sure, and it's a small amount, but it's a big amount, I suppose, 0.7% of our GDP must go on foreign aid. And the government have turned around and said, well, actually, because we're finding it a bit tough at the moment, we'll break our promise. And we're now only going to contribute 0.5% to foreign aid. So at the time when the world needs it the most, the UK is stepping away. And unfortunately, there was a vote in Parliament yesterday, and one or two MPs with backbone stood up and opposed the government. Theresa May, the ex-Prime Minister, opposed Boris Johnson because she felt it was wrong to break a promise to help others. So I think, you know, what can I do? Well, I can turn around and, well, should I buy South African wine, for example? Will that help boost the South African economy? Only a small, tiny thing, but, or does that exacerbate the problem? If I bought South African wine, would any of that money find its way into a township? Is the question I'm asking myself. But yeah, I think the thing I can do is to encourage others to support South Africa, to support other countries where help's needed. And we need not to think about the UK first, like Boris Johnson has done by cutting the aid budget, but to think about helping the world first, because we are where we are because we exploited the world. You know, the UK economy is built on having exploited the rest of the world. So it's our duty to try and improve the rest of the world to the standard where we are. And you know, the difference between our COVID experience and your COVID experience is vast. And it's because we're in a great position because we built that from exploiting the world. And that's why I say we should go back to supporting the rest of the world. Buy stuff from South Africa, buy stuff from other countries, and increase our aid budget. So that's my sort of thoughts, that actually we can do something. Individual little tiny things multiplied by every single person on the planet makes huge things. And of course, there's also that starfish thing, isn't there? You know, you can't throw every starfish back in the ocean, but you can save at least one or two. So yeah, we should all do our bit. So that's my bit.
Right, thanks so much, Ed. Yeah, and every little bit does make a difference. And as Lee said in the chat there, you know, farm laborers on vineyards and things like that. I mean, we're talking well over 280,000 people who are employed in the liquor industry in this country, and many of them have their jobs at threat, but many of them support, you know, extended families of 10, plus, so, any bit of revenue that goes back into that industry does trickle down, albeit in a very small manner to those townships, to those laborers' families. So I think, everything can make a difference. So Herman, over to you.
Morning, nice to see you again. Edward, just one remark with regards to youth unemployment. It's actually worse. 46% is the official figure. 30% have given up looking for jobs. That means 75% of young people have no hope for ever getting a job. Now, to look what I or we can do, I think also requires setting a bit of a context. Namely, Zuma's incarceration was only the trigger for what's happening right now. Anyone who expected anything else was living not in South Africa, but behind the moon. This country was a social powder keg, a tinderbox for years, and all it needed was a trigger. Whether the trigger was Zuma or Herman Funk or Lee Harrison, doesn't matter. All it needed that. So what can we do? Well, first of all, I think we need to really oppose, how should I say, yes, object to certain measures by government as insufficient. To just give you one example, at the beginning of lockdown in 2020, the government decided to bring 20,000 troops onto the street to prevent people from drinking and from seeing each other. Now we have a crisis, towns are burning, and we have 2,500 troops on the street. I mean, please. And our minister of I nearly said social security, of safety, or whatever security is what she's called, says that their intelligence was top notch and they prevented worse things from happening. What can we do? I think we need to all engage in with organizations. We have, and that's one of the beautiful things of South Africa, we have a very free press. They are not shy to speak up. We have a very strong civil society, and I think they need reinforcement by all of us. And the way I see things possibly turning out for the better is if government would call for a state of emergency, climb in and get criminality under control. And then we need a Marshall Plan, and we need a government of national unity where skills and not relationships are the deciding factor of the position you are going to have within both government and civil service. Thank you.
Thanks, Herman. Yeah, I think some very strong points there, and it is about getting behind the people who are getting in front of the people, I think, and who can actually get messages out there. And I've heard some very strong messages from people like the the Council of Churches and so on recently, who are really, trying to get up in the face of government and get them to take some action. So, Jasper, over to you.
We literally have a burning issue on the table today. And a friend of mine, Ivan also knows him, Ian van Niekerk. I went with him last year, August, to a strategic meeting with a bunch of farmers in the Vicksburg area. And we slept over on a farm, and after our supper that evening, just when we were ready to go to bed, we spotted that there's a veld fire going. And I was then privileged to see how these farmers are organized in handling a veld fire. And they all had their water cans, but it's like a massive, probably 500-liter thing already mounted on the back of a trailer, already filled with generators. And on their radios, they immediately let each other know where the fire is, and the first who got there started to contain the fire. So that was quite an experience, to say that. So Ian, who grew up on farms, when this thing erupted the last 2 days, he had a vision He's also a very a strong, committed Christian, but he had a vision of how do we handle the situation that we have right in front of us. And he was reminded that when you have a really strong fire coming at you, you don't fight it from the front because it will just run over you and you'll get burned in the process. You can't contain it. You then go around the fire to the back, and where the fire has already basically run itself out, you then start killing the fire. And you're starting to contain the fire from the back. Let the front run its course. In front, the fire will come to a place where you can then actually intercept it and do interventions and actually destroy the fire at that point in time, or the fire will just burn itself out. Now, in the context of what we face right now, I do agree with all the other speakers. This is not a new thing that is catching anyone by surprise. It's almost a miracle that it took so long for it to happen, because entities like the EFF have for years tried to be that spark to create it. And a couple of months ago, we've had incidents, very innocent incidents, but with the EFF trying to make it a racial issue and stuff like that. But now the thing has happened, and I don't know how much was actually fueled by the fact that the so-called example of the leaders is we can get away with murder, we can get away with corruption, and the people say, but if you can do it, then we can do it. So I think we have a long systemic illness in society, and for too long the middle class, the people who have the privilege, and anyone who has a roof over his head and food on his table today is in the privileged section. We, for too long, was quietly happy that let someone else figure it out, let someone else do it. I think what the symbolism of the vision that Ian saw is this fire is going to be fueled and rage, and the winds are stirring it and stuff. But you know, no fire lasts forever. But what can we in the meantime do? So I believe, and I see it already, and I'm part of many such smaller groups that are rising in society to say, listen, we no longer ask permission. We are standing up. We are doing what we can do. I know that in Ian's group in Doornkloof, they have a whole committed society of people who say, we can't expect government and police to do anything for us. And even the hospitals, the whole so-called sections that supposedly should be run by governments is dysfunctional. But guys, there's nothing wrong with us. What can we do? What alternatives do we have? And they're setting up their own local groups in all the areas, from health to provision of food and alternative mechanisms and stuff like that. So I see that happening anyway, because you know, we've shown that we're a resilient people. But then, you know, I'm also asking, how did nations that were completely destroyed, I can't even imagine, and someone sent me something in this last week or two about the young boy who grew up in the Boer War around the 1900s, and that was coupled with also a plague and a pandemic where people were so ill, and he woke up and it was a little boy of 5 years old or something, and both his parents were basically unconscious for 2 days, couldn't look after him, and they were poor. Now, some of us will know him, F.R. Venter, the author of many books, but he was that 5-year-old boy. And they told the story of basically how the Afrikaner nation stood up over a period of many years by just working together, just systematically. And, you know, out of that, and for the first, from 1900s to probably the 1960s, they didn't have much say over their own political destination. That only came in the 60s. But they started to put things in place that today, and it's now been robbed again and destroyed, but it was working very well. Eskom, Sasol, IDC, many of these institutions, Sanlam, Mutual, these were institutions that were created as a result of the challenges that we faced at that time. I believe this thing that has now happened, will hopefully be, as it was what do you call it, a catalyst for people to burst over their anger, will also be a catalyst for the middle class and the well-meaning people in society to say, listen, let's take hands across political, religious, class, race, but let's build our community. Let's build it for the future. And let's step by step do the little that you can. I know of one place in some of these gated estates, they've started a soup and bread mission for the guards that stand in this ice cold and have to keep the estate safe. And they're now reaching out to that. And I think I see that happening. So by faith, I declare that as the enemy is trying to use this to bring total disruption and total destruction, I see that it will be turned for good, and enough people will start taking hands. And it's not going to be easy. A lot of destruction has taken place, but step by step, as we take hands, we know that, and it's part of our mandate on this platform as well. How do we unlock resources? There's still a lot of resources that can be quickly unlocked if people have the same mindset, and people don't necessarily have to have the same mindset as long as they have the same motivation and the same cause. And right now, I think pure hunger, pure need will make us take hands to say, let's sort our differences out later, but let's just fix this problem.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jasper. I think some great points there and some inspiration as well. So thank you very much for that. So Lee, over to you to add your thoughts into it.
Thanks, Ivan. Just two thoughts. The one is echoing what Thabiso was saying, and recognizing, as Trevor said, and as we've all said, that you can't. This isn't about denial. This isn't about hiding your head in the sand. It's not about burying yourself somewhere so that, hopefully it'll just wash over you. So you do have to face it. But what we can do is, in the midst of facing that reality, not despair. And the temptation to despair is real, because it just feels like I think also because the level of exhaustion over a long period of time of having to face one thing after the next. We talk about a third wave, but it just feels like it's an ongoing onslaught. And so it's your maintaining your mental health in the midst of huge challenges is a contribution, because you can make a difference by your own state of mind, your own choices to look for the good, to remain healthy within yourself. And when you are in that place, you are better able to look for solutions rather than yourself become a statistic in one way or another. So I think that is a very, very important place to start. And then I wanted to end with something that is happening, that is another wave. And I loved Jasper's illustration of coming from the back. So that is already happening. I don't know if people are aware that taxi associations, township residents associations are combining their efforts, and they are surrounding malls and protecting them. So there are banks and rows of taxis that are just literally lining or the perimeter of endangered areas, holding off the marauders. And it's happening in Diepsloot, it's happening, I see Trevor says Bushbuck Bridge, but it's in Mplanteni, in Mahakeng. It's actually, just as the looting was a ripple effect. This is also becoming a ripple effect. One, and it's communities coming together. In Deep Sloot, they've actually taken it one step further, and in collaboration. And again, Jasper, you're talking about people holding hands across different organizations. The Taxi Association, the Residents Association, and the police are going door to door in Deep Sloot and retrieving stolen goods and returning them to the mall because they are protecting the livelihoods of their community members. So there's this, so things are, there's a different spirit that is starting to emerge that is saying, we are taking responsibility, we are going to make a difference, we are going to turn this around. We are not going to be defined by the fire and the fires. We're going to change or be the people that we really believe ourselves to be as a people and as a nation. So I just wanted to end on that note.
Great, thanks so much, Lee. Yeah, I think it's it is perhaps the catalyst that this country needed in a strange kind of way, to actually bring us together, to get people to start to stand together in the ways that you and Jasper have described, because that is the way I believe that things are going to get turned around. It's not sitting back and waiting for so-called leaders and politicians and other figures of authority to actually do something, because they are doing nothing. All they're doing is making hot air statements and not actually taking any decent action. And the action that is being taken, as was mentioned earlier, is completely skewed to the situation. Plus a couple of military vehicles out to solve a major crisis, but you engage the entire army to lock ordinary citizens down. So things, and I think people are really starting to recognize these complete inefficiencies and well, it's not inefficiencies, it's skewed responses, and say enough is enough. And I think when the people say enough is enough, things are going to happen. I think we've all got to get into that mode and say enough is enough. We now need to actually take control and do what's right for the country, for everybody. So hopefully there are some real good will come out of all of this. Good, thanks everybody. So that's first session of the day done, dusted. Next session up in 19 minutes. Back in the UK, and it's open mic by the looks of things. So join us in a few minutes. We'll see you a bit later. Cheers now.
I do want to just mention the subtopic for tomorrow, and it's business fundamentals tomorrow. So and I think it's appropriate. We're going to be talking about how committed are you, because sometimes you really just have to hang on by your fingertips in these kinds of times. So yeah, how committed are you? That's the topic for business fundamentals tomorrow.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, be committed. Get committed. I'm not too sure which one, but anyway, we'll find out that tomorrow. So good. See you just now. Cheers, everyone.